The recall is over. Yes, Gavin Newsom has survived. So we'll talk just a bit about what that means and where we go from there. It's probably better news than you think it is, but there's still going to be some people on the right, especially, who are crying. So we'll talk just a bit about that. General Milley is in the news once again for something that some people are calling treason. So we'll talk just a bit about what that means and where that goes. Kathy Hochul tells Facebook to clean up its act on abortion misinformation. Just a few days in office and she's already dropping the hammer. So we'll talk just a bit about that. And the Honorable and Venerable Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, D-Twitch, faces down an ethics complaint over her appearance at the Met Gala. It's going to be all this and more. Hey, do you trust the plan yet? I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, and we have a lot to get to today in a abbreviated amount of time. I must say too, because I overslept this morning. I went to bed at a decent hour, but I did that weird thing that I do where I just kind of lay there and stare at the ceiling. I went to bed at 10, and by 1, I was still looking at. Well, I started reading by that point, but I was still looking at the ceiling by that point. By 1 o'clock in the morning, and my alarm clock goes off at 5. Those times are all in Central Time, so those of you who are thinking that it's been 3 hours since then, I assure you it's only been 2. And yeah, once the 5 o'clock rule, I missed the 5 o'clock one completely. Barely moved for the 6 o'clock one, and it was 6:40 or 6:50 before I even moved out of my bed. And then I walked out to the office and realized that half of my tabs weren't responding. I had to go back. I don't know if it was some of the servers out there, if it was any of that. I actually think it was because I had the live results of the election up on my computer. Because once I closed that, some of this stuff started working a little bit better, but not very much. But I think I have fixed enough of the issues that were functional. We're not running 100%, but we're functional here, and that's what we need to do right now because we gotta talk about a lot. But before we get into any of that, head on over and check out my friends, the Porch Boys, the Daily Ignoramus, the Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, and the Freckles and the Freckles and Brit Show. Porch Boys put on another great episode last night. It was a lot of fun. They're getting their rhythm down. You know, it's a rough start because it's 3 people that hadn't worked together previously, but they're starting to understand what's going on. They're starting to understand the tech. The tech producer is starting to learn how everything goes. So it all looks great over there. Go over there and check them out. Also, check out the Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, who also streamed last night, but I unfortunately missed it. And the Freckles and Brit Show. Go and check all those shows out. They're great shows. They are great friends to the program. I gotta check with Brit and see if she's ready to go start doing the logo for the website. That'll be cool, I think. Yeah, well, go over and check all those shows out. They're great shows and help me support great creators. All right, let's get in with your finance today right away. Let's get the live chat up so I can see what you guys are doing. Let's get the monitors going. See what's happening over here. Once again, sorry for the late start. It is just every little thing stacked up on here. Maybe it's the Newsom curse. Maybe that's what's happening there. All right, let's get into it, though. Starting with your finance. That's weird. Why am I looking at my monitor screen right now when I should be looking at my center screen? Like I said, tech issues abound. Because that's what we should be looking at. This screen. Oh, this is already fun. Alright, let's get into it. Starting with the Dow. The Dow looks like it dropped 190 points yesterday. Dropped down again to 34,577.57. It had an update for a day, and it's looking like it's coming back down. The inflation is really hitting into people. But I'm sure that, looking in that the recall was happening, I'm sure a lot of people were selling off too, especially for Silicon Valley. So that actually might be another thing too, some of the uncertainty of what's going on in California. So we'll check in with some of the other websites and see what's going on there. I should do IBD instead. Let's do that, because I didn't like that Yahoo one, but I couldn't find an IBD one. So we'll do that instead. We'll switch some stuff around on the fly. But that's what we're seeing coming up out of the Dow. Your Bitcoin is at $47,594 and 40 US cents. So it looks like that is on the up and up as well. So if you bought some crypto, some Bitcoin on sale, congratulations. You're already starting to see even the minorest of minor returns, but still a little bit of a return. Your scrap metal looks like you are down, or copper is up, steel is down, aluminum is up yet again. Although I'm not sure how accurate this is, because it looks like everything that's made out of copper took a big drop in individuals. The average is saying it's up, but the individuals are all saying it's down. Your steel is... steel box is down. Some of your irons and rotors and everything are coming back up. Aluminum radiators are down. Sheet aluminum is... aluminum radiators are up. Wow, why can't I talk this morning? Aluminum radiators are up. Cans are up. Sheet aluminum is up. Rims are down. Clean aluminum and copper fin is down. So you got a big mixed bag of where your aluminum is. Go check with your current metal prices. I can't tell you what's going to be good and what's going to be bad to sell today, but check around. It looks like it's going to be a mixed day. All right, let's check in with IBD. From Investors Business Daily. Dow Jones today lags, futures mixed, China, data, casinos, Regeneron on COVID deal, Microsoft dividend in focus. This is from Alan R. Elliott. Stock futures weakened in a mixed trade Wednesday, reflecting action across global markets and rising oil prices, and company news propped early trade. Regeneron jumped on COVID treatment news. Microsoft led the Dow Jones today after a dividend hike and a share buyback announcement. NASDAQ 100 futures managed a 0.1% gain, while S&P 500 futures struggled to hold a fraction above fair value. Dow Jones futures reversed early gains and slipped into tight losses, with Nike leading the downside. Casino owners continue to take a pounding following Tuesday's regulatory news out of Macau, China. Wynn Resorts and Las Vegas Sands each dropped about 5% after falling about 10% each on Tuesday. China-based stocks remain under pressure as data shows economic growth slowing as the country battles the Delta phase of the coronavirus pandemic. Citrix bolted 4% higher to lead the S&P 500. Citrix has been climbing since September 8th, when the news reports revealed that activist hedge fund Elliott Management had built a stake of more than 10% in the company, valued at more than $1.3 billion. The fund is reportedly agitating for management to boost the stock's value. COVID treatment maker Regeneron rallied 2.5% in early trade action. The company announced late Tuesday that the U.S. government agreed to buy another 1.4 million doses of the company's COVID-19 treatment for $2.9 billion. The news led three analysts to raise the price targets. H.C. Wainwright weighed in at the top of the range with an 831 target. HC, that long word that starts with hydroxy that we can't say on YouTube. On the IPO front, ThoughtWorks Holdings priced its initial offering and was due to begin trading on Wednesday's session. The new stock priced at 21 above the 18 to 20 target range, raising $774 million. The ThoughtWorks ticker showed the name Turing Holding early Wednesday, but the company was due to change its name at the start of trading. Leaderboard stocks Mercado Libre, Deckers Outdoor were rising near buy points in pre-market trade. ASML Holdings and Moderna each rose 0.8% on the IBD 50 list. Both stocks are extended, although Moderna is in the 6th week of a possible base pattern. And this is AMSL, not ASMR. One makes you feel weird in the spine, and one gets you medicine. IBD leaderboard listing Microsoft is leading both the NASDAQ 100 and the Dow Jones today. Shares rose 1.2% after the company increased its quarterly dividend by 11% to 62 cents a share and announced a $60 billion Microsoft stock buyback program. The blue chip is extended after a breakout in June, but it is in the fourth week of a consolidation and has effectively a 3-week tight offering buy point at 305.94. Chevron also traded high on the Dow, up 0.7% as oil prices took another jump. West Texas Intermediate futures rose 1.4% in early trade, moving to near $71.50 a barrel. Jesus, what's this going to do to gas? What is this going to do to gas? Moving higher for a fourth day, U.S. oil prices are now above a recent resistance around the $70 level. WTI is almost 16% from a late August low. OPEC on Monday cranked its oil demand forecast for next year higher by 900,000 barrels a day, putting its 2022 estimate now at 4.2 million barrels per day above the 2021 levels. At the same time, the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement reported on Wednesday that 39% of oil and natural production remained shut down following Hurricane Ida. Official data released in China on Wednesday showed retail sales rose 2.5% in August, far below expectations for a 7% increase. Industrial production and construction investment also missed targets for the month, in what analysts generally read as the impact of the country's battle to subdue the spreading Delta wave of the coronavirus. Casino and gambling stocks took a bite out of the market as regulators in Macau announced plans to tighten oversight and restrictions on gambling operations. Top gaming stocks stripped off $18.4 billion in a combined market value on China's markets on Wednesday, according to Bloomberg, which is Ron Helton's favorite website by his favorite politician. And they're not going to give us the futures on this one because it's Alan Elliott. It's not the regular Ed Carson one we read. So we will take this and we will move on. Check the next one here from CNN. Excuse me. Dow futures turned negative as markets try to shake the September doldrums. From Tanaya Makil. Futures contracts tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average turned negative Wednesday after the blue chip index dropped nearly 300 points on Tuesday in the latest string of negative trading sessions this September. Dow futures shed about 20 points, S&P 500 futures traded near the flat line, and NASDAQ 100 futures ticked up 0.1%. U.S. stock futures bounced overnight but gave up gains Wednesday morning. Markets have been in a funk so far this morning amid rising investor worries about the Delta variant derailing the economic recovery, along with hand-wringing over the next action by the Federal Reserve. The Dow, S&P 500, and small-cap Russell 2000 index have been in the red for 6 of the last 7 days. Tuesday marked the 5th straight day of losses for the NASDAQ. For September, the Dow is off by more than 2%, and the S&P 500 is off by 1.8%. Despite concerns about the recent downshift in economic and business cycle momentum, we remain confident that strong growth lies ahead and activity is bound to reaccelerate, wrote J.P. Morgan strategist Dubravko Lakos Buhas in a note on Wednesday. We remain positive on the equity outlook and expect the S&P 500 to reach 4,700 by the end of this year and surpass 5,000 next year on better than expected earnings. Honk, honk. Honk, 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 honk. Because what happens towards the end of next year? The midterms. Microsoft shares gained more than 1% in pre-market trading after announcing a dividend increase in a sizable $60 billion share repurchase program. Energy stocks, which have been popular bets among investors banking on a big economic recovery, gained in pre-market trading as WTI crude topped $71. Exxon added about 1%. Apple shares rebounded slightly in pre-market trading after the shares fell Tuesday after the unveiling of a new iPhone and other products. Casino stocks like Las Vegas and Sands and Wynn Resorts traded in the red again in the pre-market. Those names took a big hit Tuesday as the government of Macau looks to increase regulatory scrutiny over casinos, and Chinese health authorities reported a COVID-19 outbreak. So, in regular trading, the Dow fell 292 points, or 0.8%. The S&P 500 lost 0.6% to finish at 4443.05, and the NASDAQ Composite slipped 0.5% to 15,037.76. So that's where your finance is looking at. It looks like we are seeing another down day. We'll see what happens with that. And where we go tomorrow, after all the political uncertainty is gone, let's move into some of that political uncertainty. Reading first from the New York Post, because before we even get into the California stuff, we have to throw some F's in the chat. And of course, I am talking about the great Norm Macdonald. Norm Macdonald, the SNL star, dead at 61. This is from Rob Bailey Milado. Norm Macdonald, the deadpan stand-up comic and beloved Saturday Night Live alum, died Tuesday after a private 9-year battle with cancer. He was 61. The former Weekend Update anchor was passing. Passing was confirmed to the Post by his manager, Mark Gervids of Brillstein Entertainment. Today is a sad day. All of us here at SNL mourn the loss of Norm Macdonald, one of the most impactful comic voices of his or any other generation. NBC's Saturday Night Live team told the Post in a statement. There are so many things that we'll miss about Norm, from his unflinching integrity to his generosity to his consistent ability to surprise. But most of all, he was just plain funny. No one was funny like Norm. The Quebec City native's close friend, Laurie Jo Hoekstra, who was with Macdonald when he died, said he fought cancer hard, but he was adamant about keeping his struggle from family, friends, and fans. That tracks. When I hear a guy lost a battle to cancer, the term really bothers me, he presciently said in 2011. It implies that he failed and somebody else who defeated cancer is heroic and courageous. Hoekstra, who was Macdonald's longtime producing partner, told Deadline in a statement, he was most proud of his comedy. He never wanted the diagnosis to affect the way the audience or any of his loved ones saw him. Norm was a pure comic. He once wrote that a joke should catch someone by surprise. It should never pander. He certainly never pandered. Norm will be missed terribly. When he published his best-selling memoir in 2015, Macdonald revealed what percentage of it was true in his signature sarcastic style. Oh, 0, he told the Post. I wanted to write a novel, but they wouldn't let me. But there are facts in the book that are true, like a river is made of water. Norm Macdonald, I mean, you wouldn't think that he would be funny based on some of the jokes that he told. That was one of the things with Norm Macdonald. But the timing and the delivery of it it made something that was moderately funny into something that cracked a lot of people up. Norm Macdonald was one of the big inspirations to why I'm sitting here right now. This show that you're watching, well, the solo videos, because at the time I didn't think I had the capability to live stream. I didn't have the capability to live stream. I don't know if I could have done that over the Wi-Fi at my ex-girlfriend's apartment where I was living at the time. But I almost made the vlog series into a weekend update sort of thing, where I was just taking the news and making fun of it. That was almost what this was, but I decided I wanted to do serious news instead. And a lot of that was Norm Macdonald. And it wasn't even just Norm Macdonald. Like, I was always a fan of Laurie Beth Denberg, too, for the same reason. I was a little bit young for SNL when Weekend Update was out, especially with kind of strict parents on top of that. I was just a little bit young for that at the time. But Laurie Beth Denberg did her vital information on all that, which was in the same vein. Taking something very funny and reading it in a very deadpan way. I was probably inspired very much by Norm Macdonald. So, and loving the vital information led me into Weekend Update, where I saw the great Norm Macdonald able to just sit there and, for the most part, not crack a grin. I mean, every once in a while he broke down while he was trying to read something. And he was the first person to say the F word on national television, live on air, to which he was subsequently fired from SNL for. But yes, this was a comedic genius. This was a person who inspired a lot of people to get into the media. And I'm glad that he was here, because there are a lot of voices that we wouldn't have heard if it had not been for Norm Macdonald. So, F's in the chat, rest in peace, and enjoy your next journey, Norm Macdonald. All right, let's go talk recall. Starting with CBS. CBS News projects Newsom survived recall effort and will remain in office. I have no author given on this one. CBS News projects that the no vote will win the recall election, meaning Governor Gavin Newsom will remain in office. Newsom avoided an upset loss that would have sent Democrats scrambling ahead of the upcoming 2021 gubernatorial elections in New Jersey and Virginia, as well as the 2022 midterm elections. Less than an hour after the polls closed, Newsom addressed supporters. "No is the only thing that was expressed tonight," he said. "I want to focus on what we said yes to as a state. We said yes to science." Science! Trademark. "We said yes to vaccines. We said yes to ending this pandemic because I'm going to lock you in your motherfucking houses again." "We said yes to the people's right to vote without fear of fake fraud or voter suppression. Honk! 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 Motherfucking honk!" The no vote won out with the most demographic groups. Majorities of both men and women, whites and non-white voters, and voters of all age groups voted in the recall. Honk honk. And there is, with 70% of the precincts reporting, 63.9% vote no, 36.1% vote yes. This was the sixth recall attempt against Newsom, but the first to reach the threshold of signatures needed to trigger an election. The recall began in February of 2020 when a group called the California Patriot Coalition aimed to remove Newsom over his policies on COVID-19, homelessness, immigration, and the state's taxes and affordability. Meanwhile, you continue to chase more people out of your state. The recall effort really only took off after Newsom was spotted dining inside an upscale Napa Valley restaurant while his lockdowns on indoor dining were in place. The nation's most populous state was the first to order statewide shutdowns at the onset of the pandemic, and Newsom was the first to require vaccine and mask mandates for healthcare workers and teachers. In the closing weeks of the campaign, Newsom and Democrats focused on the responses to COVID-19 as well as national issues like the threats to women's rights in the wake of the Texas abortion law. Yeah, that was the big one that went around too. If Newsom gets elected, if he gets elected, then oh my God, he's going to chain all the elders. Going to chain all. He's going to chain all those women to the stoves, and they're never going to be able to go and get an abortion. Exit polling indicated that COVID-19 was the main issue voters cared about. While Newsom's handling of the disease galvanized the recall movement, voters ultimately approved of Newsom's decisions in addressing it honk honk. And he was able to capitalize on that in the closing weeks of the race. Roughly 30% of voters said COVID-19 is the most important issue facing California, followed by a quarter who picked homelessness, the economy, wildfires, and crime rounded out the top 5 issues. For those voting no on keeping the recall, Gavin Newsom as governor, the coronavirus is the issue they see as the most important facing their state. For those voting yes on the recall, removing Newsom as governor, the economy and the homelessness were the most important for them. Proponents of the recall effort have been critical of Newsom's COVID policies, mostly arguing that they are too strict. National Democrats were brought in to support Newsom throughout the race. Former President Barack Obama and Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren all cut advertisements against the recall. Mr. Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris both headlined rallies for Newsom in the weeks before the election. The Democratic Governors Association spent more than $6 million overall to beat the recall. Mr. Biden reminded voters that the outcome would have implications beyond the state's borders, saying, The eyes of the nation are in California because the decision you're about to make isn't just going to have a huge impact on California. It's going to reverberate around the nation. A total of 46 candidates were on the replacement ballot, including Republican talk show host Larry Elder, who led candidates in polling since entering the race in mid-July. Newsom and Democrats made him the de facto face of the recall and pointed to his comments about the pinko pox and past guests who shared disinformation on the radio show. Can you just... On top of every other issue that we've had today, the allergies are kicking my ass again. And we had a good week. I didn't have to worry about this for like 6 days. Elder previously suggested there could be shenanigans and widespread voter fraud in the recall election and claimed his campaign is ready to sue. Honk, 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 honk. Nothing bad happened in this election, though. Honk, honk. Most secure election in 2021. Honk, honk. I believe that so many people are going to vote to recall him that there won't be any question about the outcome of this election, he told CBS News on Sunday. But Elder's campaign website links to a separate website for people to report allegations of fraud and baselessly claims that statistical analyses used to detect fraud already found that the recall would be defeated before any votes were counted. Although exit polls showed voters on Tuesday had a net unfavorable opinion of Larry Elder, he appeared to be popular among the GOP. Exit polls showed 3 of 4 Republicans, and conservatives view Elder favorably, as do nearly half of independents, casting their vote on the recall. So, and he's already come out and given a speech on this too. I want to see if I can find this really quick and offer this up to you guys because I got to step away for a half a second.
Appears we are enjoying it.
All right, let's listen to Gavin Newsom brag about the fact that the election was Hong Kong, the most secure one in history.
Overwhelmingly no vote tonight here in the state of California. But no is not the only thing that was expressed tonight. I want to focus on what we said yes to as a state. We said yes to science. We said yes to vaccines. We said yes to ending this pandemic. We said yes to people's right to vote without fear of fake fraud or voter suppression. We said yes to women's fundamental constitutional right to decide for herself what she does with her body, her fate and future. We said yes to diversity. We said yes to inclusion. We said yes to pluralism. We said yes to all those things that we hold dear as Californians, and I would argue as Americans: economic justice, social justice, racial justice, environmental justice, our values where California's made so much progress. All of those things were on the ballot this evening. And so I'm humbled and grateful to the millions and millions of Californians that exercise their fundamental right to vote and express themselves so overwhelmingly by rejecting the division, by rejecting the cynicism, by rejecting so much of the negativity that's defined our politics in this country over the course of so many years. I just think of our kids watching all of this. Nightly news, day in and day out. And I just wonder, I've got 4 young kids. Oldest about to turn 12 this weekend.
All right, I can't listen to this asshole anymore. Because you know this would have been a completely different speech if they would have Hong Kong made this go the other way. If this would have been something completely different and Newsom would have been recalled. Oh, it's fraud. It's horrible. Oh, jeez. Excuse me. It's fraud. It's horrible. It's the worst thing that could have ever happened. The dirty person cheated. And then everything you would have heard about Larry Elder coming back through this. There are names that they would have been calling him that I will not say on YouTube just because I do say quite a bit, like repeal the 19th and stuff like that would get me shut down on YouTube, that certain other people in my broadcast group that's upcoming are afraid to say on YouTube. Porch Boys. But, they would be saying horrible, horrible things about him. This would have become nasty. And here, Newsom has the audacity to come up here and say that he loves the positivity that comes out of politics when Democrats win. When they're the ones who are propagating all the negativity that come back up out of this. All right, let's talk about Larry Elder. Reading from The Hill. Elder concedes California recall. Stay tuned. This is from Cameron Jenkins. Republican candidate Larry Elder conceded the California recall election to Gavin Newsom late Tuesday while telling his supporters to stay tuned. Newsom successfully beat back the recall efforts, securing nearly 59% of the vote. About 33% of California voters cast ballots in favor of recalling Newsom. According to the Associated Press, Elder told his supporters in his concession speech that We may have lost the battle, but we're going to win the war. Incomplete election results had placed Elder far ahead of the other 46 candidates vying to replace Newsom in the recall election. The AP noted Newsom will continue to hold the office of governor and will not face re-election until next year. Elder has referred to himself as a former radio host, pointing to the possible desire to leave his old career behind. Last week, Elder avoided answering questions about whether or not he would run against Newsom in 2022, with the California governor already confirming that he is seeking a second term, the Associated Press reported. Had Elder been successful in the recall election, he would have become the first black governor of California. And that's one of the other sides of this, too. Alright, so here's what's happening with the recall election, and here's what you need to pay attention to. First off, those of you in California who got the recall to where it is. I'm talking about Britt because while she lived there, she had signed the petition. I think Neff, you have signed the petition. I see you in the chat over there. I believe that you have signed this. But let's be realistic about what happened here. Yes, Newsom won the recall, and that was Honk. We all expected that to happen. But you saw something else that came from this. Something that actually makes me very happy, given how authoritarian the Democrat Party is. Now, if the Democrat Party, the Union Worker Democrat Party, moved back into the more liberal positions it had in the 90s, I could possibly support them again. But this authoritarian, top-down, socialistic, centrally planned Democrat Party needs to fucking go. It needs to be beat down so badly that they can't recover at all. It needs to be eliminated from the earth and the salt. It needs to be eliminated from the planet and the earth salted where it stood, so it can never ever grow back again. And we will do some of this with voting. I know a lot of people are blackpilled saying the system is so rigged and we'll never be able to fix it because the system's broken and rigged, and don't say voting because voting doesn't help. Well, here's the reality. By coming to a news program like this, instead of going to the mainstream media. That is in spite of the fact that I use the mainstream media as the majority of my source material. But by coming to a program like this and finding like-minded people like you across the country to join and rally together with, that's one of the first steps that you're doing to go start to fight this. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. One of the things that made me happiest about this is that the authoritarian, top-down, centrally planned Democrat Party that is currently in control of the DNC right now was scared. They were frightened. They were scared to death. They're going to come back out and say, oh, no, we always knew that we were going to win. And I'm going to add that with a honk because, of course they always knew that they could honk the election, but they were afraid. This recall made Democrats afraid, and it had nothing to do, by the way, with what Larry Elder is going to do in his last year of office. Oh no, he could end abortion for the world. He could end gay marriage. He could end an economy. No, he couldn't. For the vast majority, and even any of his agenda wouldn't have gone through, but the legislative agenda in California would have hammered forward. I don't know how the veto works in California's legislature, but given the population centers and the electoral activity of Los Angeles, Sacramento, and San Francisco, I'm sure they had the votes to override any veto that Larry Elder put out there. Larry Elder had no chance in hell of getting his legislative agenda done. None. Zip. Zero. It was either going to stop legislation entirely in California, or it was going to force the legislature to come up with the legislation and then, come up with the votes to override the veto. It wasn't just going to be a Democrat governor rubber stamping everything else that comes back through. But Democrats got scared. Legitimately. They looked at this, they looked at the fact that you got the signatures, you guys in California got the signatures out there, that you got enough people out there, and enough signature matches that you could overcome the extremely stringent signature matching system, which is only racist if it's done in Georgia, by the way, that you could overcome that and still get enough signatures out there to make Gavin Newsom come out and defend his agenda and his horrible lockdown agenda. Larry Elder had one thing that he could do as governor that would have thrown the DNC into chaos, and it was something that they were afraid of. Dianne Feinstein is not going to live forever. And she is on the cusp of breaking down and losing everything. She's no spring chicken, and she may have worse mental issues than Joe Biden does at this point. And that's what Democrats were afraid of. They were afraid of losing their slim majority in the Senate, that they hopefully think that they can honk again next time through, coming up in 2022 here. But they were legitimately afraid. It's the same thing when we go back and we look at all these things that are happening in Texas. The voting law over there, the voting laws in Georgia and Iowa. They're afraid. The fact that the North Carolina Supreme Court is trying to change its structure entirely so they can block an amendment that was overwhelmingly supported by North Carolinians that allows voter ID to be constitutionally enshrined. Democrats are scared to death right now. And if they lose that just one seat in the Senate, and the Turtle Man becomes the majority leader once again, which go ahead, keep fucking sticking your dick into Joe Manchin. Keep fucking him in the ass and see what he does. That's what I'm the happiest to see out of all this. Because the left in this uber progressives, they didn't know. They didn't know what they were going to wake up to today when they went into the ballot box yesterday. They thought that they might lose their grip of power. And I'm very glad to see that. So that's my takeaway from this. That's what I see from this. We will see what happens in the next gubernatorial election and what happens through the 2022 midterms. Let's keep going here, though. I got a tweet for you guys here. The Free State tweets out, a bill has been introduced to allow New Hampshire to secede from the Union. So let's see what's going on with that. Reading from the Center Square. Lawmaker wants New Hampshire to declare independence. This is from Christian Wade over at the Center Square. A New Hampshire lawmaker is pushing for a referendum asking the state's voters if they want to secede from the United States. State Rep. Mike Sylvia, a Belmont Republican, said he has filed a proposal constitutional amendment that would ask voters in the 2022 midterm elections to break ties with Washington, D.C. and become a separate nation state. In an interview, Sylvia said he filed the measure in response to the federal government's actions to prevent the spread of the coronavirus, including the U.S. CDC eviction ban, and more recently President Biden's mandate requiring federal workers to get vaccinated. There are hundreds of examples of the federal government overstepping its authority, he told the Center Square. Enough is enough. We should put this before the voters to decide. He said while secession would likely mean a loss of federal funding and other support from Washington, there would be also benefits for New Hampshire's residents, such as not having to pay a federal income tax. New Hampshire has no state income tax. We are a donor state that pays out more in federal income taxes than what we got back, Sylvia said. If cleared for the ballot, the referendum would read, New Hampshire peacefully declares independence from the United States and immediately proceeds as a sovereign nation. All other references to the United States in this Constitution, state statutes, and regulations are nullified. The long shot proposal, which was filed with the Office for Legislative Services, would need to be considered for the next legislative session to get that underway in January. To make it to the ballot, the measure would need to be approved by a 60% vote in the GOP-controlled House and Senate before it could be put to voters in the 2022 elections. Under state law, it wouldn't require approval from the Republican governor, Chris Sununu. The move is backed by a conservative group called Liberty Rock, which says New Hampshire voters haven't had the chance to reevaluate their relationship with the federal government in hundreds of years. Their ancestors made the decision to join the Union 240 years ago in a different world, one in which the federal government did not violate our every right and did not steal half of our money to fund their tyranny, the group posted. The group published a list of more than 70 reasons that the New Hampshire should secede from the Union, ranging from federal anti-gun laws to corona-fascism and violations of the civil rights by federal agencies, and suggested the Granite State was well positioned to go it alone. New Hampshire citizens are the hardest workers and earn the most money, which is demonstrated by our continent-leading median household income. The group posted, "We don't need DC politicians to be wealthy." So, that happened. I have some thoughts about this. I'm sure that you guys realized that I was going to have some thoughts about this. I do want to look at some of this strategically, so let's grab a map. Because there are some problems that look at this strategically. Alright, let's add this over here to the stack. Alright, so this is the state of New Hampshire. They are mostly landlocked and they are surrounded by United States, with the exception of a small section here down by Portsmouth that has a seaboard and a seaport. And a small section here that goes up over the no, there isn't a river there, I'm sorry. But that goes up and borders up with Canada. Those are the only two places where New Hampshire can directly trade with anybody other than the United States. Now, New Hampshire is full of natural resources, including granite, what their state is named for, and trees, so they can do lumber. They have factories where they can do textiles, both coming in, with bringing materials in, with sending materials out. They do have the mountains that they can mine. So, I mean, they're not completely screwed when it comes to resources. They're not entirely screwed on that. As far as heating and oil go, I don't know. I don't believe there's any natural oil field under there, so they would have to import fuel. And there would be a big question over what happens with Maine. Because in order to get to Maine at all, a U.S. citizen would have to either fly to Vermont or to DC, anywhere else in the country that they wanted to go, or from anywhere in the country that they wanted to come from to get to Maine, or they would have to pass through New Hampshire sovereign borders. So I have a lot of questions about how this goes. I mean, one of the questions I would actually ask would be, would Maine be included in the deal? Could they convince Maine to go along with them and become their own sovereign nation? That would actually improve the chances, because Maine also is full of natural resources. They'd probably still have to go with fuel from somewhere external, but Maine in and of itself has much more seaboard, much more harbor, many, many more opportunities to trade with Canada. And yes, you wouldn't have to have the Mainers going through sovereign territory of New Hampshire to go get to the rest of the country proper. So with that, I don't know if this is feasible. And I've said this too about, like Wyoming puts up the idea of we're going to go secede. Wisconsinites, not Wisconsin themselves, but Wisconsinites have put up the idea we should secede from the Union. How do you plan to do that? Now, Wisconsin does have a port and a direct line through the St. Lawrence Seaway and plenty of natural resources. Plus, we have fracking. We wouldn't have oil, but we would at least have fuel so we could keep ourselves warm. But like Wyoming, completely landlocked. The only thing you can do is go back over U.S. roads if you want to transport stuff or go over U.S. airspace. So, I mean, these are all things you have to think about when you do a secession movement like this. When you do something like this to say that you want to secede from the Union, you have to look at what territory you're going to get and how you're going to have an economy and trade with other people to get your fuel in and out. And as it sits, New Hampshire would be ridiculously easy to blockade. Ridiculously easy. When those jackoffs in DC want to get New Hampshire back so they can have whatever it is they want on New Hampshire, it would be very, very easy to choke them out and make their people suffer for it. Oh, you want to drive your tractors? Oh, you have no oil in your state. Oh, I guess you'll have to wait for people to come in through Portsmouth. Oh, hey, look at all these naval boats that are sitting outside of Portsmouth. So I guess we'll see what happens with that and where this goes. I don't know if this is going to garner the votes in New Hampshire to make it onto the initiative. I don't know if this is going to garner the votes in New Hampshire to actually happen. I don't know if DC is going to let this happen, because after the Civil War, Old Abe made it very clear that he never wanted to see this shit again. And put a bunch of laws in place to make sure that it never happened again. But, I mean, that's what we see, and that's where we're going to go. All right, let's keep going here. From the Hill, Senate Democrats unveil new voting rights bill from Rebecca Beach and Marty Johnson. A group of Senate Democrats unveiled a new voting rights legislation on Tuesday in another attempt for the party to pass sweeping changes to federal elections in the face of the GOP filibuster. The new bill, called the Freedom to Vote Act, was released by Senator Amy Klobuchar and several co-sponsors, builds on a framework proposed earlier this year by Senator Joe Manchin, as well as the Sweeping For the People Act, which the Senate Republicans blocked in June. Though narrower than previous iterations, the 592-page bill would still enact major reforms to the American voting system, including efforts to make it easier to register to vote and set a 15-day minimum early voting window that states must meet. It would also make Election Day a federal holiday. See, I have not looked at this bill yet, this particular one. I'd like to read this one because I read the For the People Act. I have not looked at this bill. But as far as I can tell, just with the suggestions the Hill has just made here, that last one is the only one that Congress actually has a purview over. Election Day is a federal holiday. That's the only thing they can do. Otherwise, it is up to the states to decide. And here's the question I asked the last time, because people have been talking about Election Day should be a federal holiday. Those of you, and I know a lot of you guys do have a regular job where you get off on the federal holidays. I have a job where I get off on the federal holidays, but I didn't always have that. So, and the demographics that the Democrats are trying to reach out to reach out and touch and caress and, well, I'm turned on. These demographics out there, how many of them work in a job where they get a federal holiday off? Because I worked at a grocery store when I was in college proper, before I went to trade school. Actually, I worked in a grocery store when I was in trade school too, but that's another story. I worked in a grocery store while I was going through college, and a little bit after college, because the job market was so fucking shitty. And I've worked in restaurants. I worked at a banquet hall for a while I was trying to make ends meet. I worked several different jobs where you don't get federal holidays off, and the people who worked alongside me in those jobs were in the demographic that the Democrat Party is trying to reach out to, that they're trying to make this for. A lot of people don't get federal holidays off, especially the young, the college educated, or the low income. A lot of the time they don't, because the gas stations still need to run, the restaurants still need to run, and the grocery stores still need to run. They don't get these holidays off. The world doesn't just shut down because it's a national holiday, and that's an incredibly white privileged idea that it does. In fact, the vast majority of Americans, I would say, probably are at least adjacent to at least one person who is affected by the fact that businesses are still open on federal holidays. The legislation would also mandate that each state offer same-day voter registration at all polling locations by 2024, and calls for a broad range of cards and documents to qualify as proof of ID for in-person voting. They can't do that. That's against the Constitution. Following the 2020 elections, in which more Americans voted than ever before, Honk, we have seen unprecedented attacks on our democracy in states across the country, Klobuchar, chairwoman of the Senate Rules Committee, said on Tuesday. These attacks demand an immediate federal response, she added, noting that the bill would set basic national standards to make sure all Americans can cast their ballots in a way that works best for them, regardless of what zip code they live in. The bill also seeks to target gerrymandering, barring states from drawing political boundaries, with that has the intent to affect the material favorability or disfavoring of any political party. The bill comes after 18 different states this year passed 30 different laws that would make it more difficult to vote, according to an analysis from the Brennan Center for Justice at New York University School of Law. It targets a number of practices enacted in the Republican-led states. Democrats have asserted the wave of voting restrictions is a result of former President Trump's repeated claims of widespread voter fraud, which is exceedingly rare in American elections. Honk Honk cost him the November election. Honk Honk. Most popular president in history, more votes than even Barack Obama. And a narrow amount of just enough votes to push you over the edge of recounts in certain districts. Honk, 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 honk. The problem is that none of this is legal or constitutional. And a lot of people come up, like, you can point that out on Twitter. In fact, I encourage you to go do so. Point out the fact that this is completely unconstitutional, and that Article 2, Section 1 specifically puts all of these provisions that the federal government's trying to put into the hands of the states. And most of your leftoids will run out because they're out here eagerly waiting to lick off Amy Klobuchar. And they'll come out and they'll run and tell you, no, that's not true. We had the Voting Rights Act in 1965. Well, I got news for you. In spite of the fact that the Supreme Court will let that one go through, if you read Article 2, Section 1 to the letter, the Voting Rights Act is also unconstitutional. Now, I like the outcome of the Voting Rights Act. I like the fact that more people were able to vote off of this, but that doesn't mean it was constitutional. It's just like what I say when you guys stand over Ron DeSantis. Yes, it's cool. I like what Ron DeSantis is doing, but I don't like his methodology, and I don't trust the fact that he won't use that methodology for a more aggressive agenda if he becomes the president. He is the pen and the phone governor. Just because I like what he's doing doesn't mean it's constitutional or legal, or something I want to see coming out of the highest office in the land. But that's what they're trying to do right now. And of course, now they're trying to get more people on board with this. Let's listen to a video from CNBC. Or I'm sorry, MSNBC, not CNBC. Oh, did they take the video down? Okay, we might actually get popped by this. There used to be a video on that tweet, but they switched it and took it to the article.
You've been very eloquent, very passionate about the threat to American democracy that we're facing right now, about the danger from the filibuster. But what is the Democratic Party, what is your Senate Democratic Caucus actually doing to protect democracy right now? Because Texas and Florida and Georgia have passed voter suppression laws, and yet a Democratic-controlled Senate has passed nothing to stop them.
Yeah. Well, good to be back with you, Mehdi. And look, you're absolutely right. This is among the most urgent crises that we have before us. We've been talking for a good amount of the year about the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, the For the People Act. And by the way, it's not one or the other. We need both of them. We know that not a single Republican could bring themselves to vote to even begin discussion or debate on the For the People Act. So we've taken some time prior to this August recess, during the August recess, to craft a more targeted proposal that would uphold our fundamental right to vote. And as Leader Schumer said before we broke for the August recess, it is a business item number one when we return to Washington this week. So there's a lot in the For the People Act that we know is important and timely, but we have to bake in at least fundamental access to being able to register to vote, stay registered to vote, and cast your ballot.
So this targeted version of the For the People Act that you mentioned, that you've been working on, I believe.
All right. They had a minute clip of this on the video over on Twitter. I'm kind of pissed that they brought this back out to the entire 8-minute segment, but regardless off of that, the point of this is that now Padilla wants to come out and tell everybody that the key to this is getting 10 Republican senators on board. And how are we going to do that? That's what we need to do. As far as this particular bill goes, this is also going to be completely dead in the water. This is not going anywhere. They're not going to be doing anything except making another call for voters. They're going to come out and they say, "Oh, see, the evil Republicans, they blocked another election bill. They don't want you to be able to vote. They don't want to." Oh, I love this over on the trending already. There's no evidence of widespread voter fraud in the California recall election, according to fact checkers. Honk, honk. Haha. You knew that was going to be coming right away because it's trending with #rigged. Yeah, no, most secure recall election in history. The only recall election that was actually rigged was the one that Scott Walker survived. Honk, honk, that was Russian. Scott Walker is a Russian asset. Honk, 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 honk. But yeah, this isn't going anywhere. And really, honestly, like I said, this is unconstitutional. And so is the Voting Rights Act. And again, I like what came out of the Voting Rights Act. But it doesn't mean it was constitutional. All right, let's keep going. We got a lot to get to today, and we're already running up on the clock. So, I found this article from a number of different places. And it was some hot stuff. And I thought about it, because I don't ever want to give the Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness, a clip or an advertisement. But I thought to myself, what is the most left-wing activistic newspaper that I can read this article from? And I chose to archive the Washington Post for this. So this is not like the Daily Stormer coming out and saying this. This is not Fox News coming out and saying this. This is not the Daily Wire coming out and saying this. And all three of those outlets have probably reported on this here. But I took this from the Washington Post because even the people that are that far left have brought this up at this point. But without a way to come out and say, the Orange Man is bad. Top general was so fearful Trump might spark war that he made a secret call to his Chinese counterpart, new book says. This is from Isaac Stanley Becker. Twice in the final months of the Trump admin, the country's top military officer was so fearful that the president's actions might spark a war with China, that he moved urgently to avert armed conflict. In a pair of secret phone calls, General Mark A. Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, assured his Chinese counterpart, General Li Zuocheng, for the People's Liberation Army that the U.S. would not strike, according to a new book by the Washington Post associate editor Bob Woodward and national political reporter Robert Costa. One call took place on October 30th, 2020, 4 days before the election that unseated Hong Kong President Trump, and the other on January 8th, 2021, 2 days after the Capitol Selfie Fest carried out by his supporters in a quest to go and take selfies in the Capitol and air their grievances with the Congress. I had editorialized that one because that entire paragraph, other than the dates, was a lie. Except it wasn't a lie because nothing bad happened in the 2020 election and Biden is the most popular president in history, Hong Kong. The first call was prompted by Milley's review of intelligence suggesting that Chinese believed that the U.S. was preparing to attack. That belief, the authors write, was based on tensions over military exercises in the South China Sea and deepened by Trump's belligerent rhetoric towards China. General Lee, I want to assure you that the American government is stable and everything is going to be okay, Milley told him. We're not going to attack or conduct any kinetic operations against you. In the book's account, Milley went so far as to pledge he would alert his counterpart in the event of a U.S. attack, stressed by the rapport they'd established through the back channel. General Lee, you and I have known each other now for 5 years. If we're going to attack, I'm going to call you ahead of time. It's not going to be a surprise. Lee took the chairman at his word, and the authors write in the book Peril, which is set to be released next week. On the second call, placed to address Chinese fears about the events of January 6th, Lee wasn't as easily assuaged even after Milley promised him, "We're 100% steady, everything's fine, but democracy can be sloppy sometimes." Lee remained rattled, and Milley, who did not relay the conversation to Trump, according to the book, understood why. The chairman, 62 at the time, and chosen by Trump in 2018, believed the president had suffered a mental decline after the election. The authors write, a view he communicated to the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi in a phone call on January 8th. He agreed with her evaluation that Trump was unstable, according to a call transcript obtained by the authors. Believing that China could lash out, it felt a risk from unpredictable and vengeful American president, Milley took action. The same day, he called the admiral overseeing the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, the military unit responsible for Asia and Pacific region, and recommended postponing the military exercises. According to the book, the admiral complied. There's a lot of stuff here. There's a lot to talk about and a lot to move on with this. In giving information advantageous to America's enemies, and now we aren't in a hot war, and we hadn't been at the time with China, but given the fact that an attack by Trump would have put us in a hot war, then giving information to America's enemies is treason. Plain and simple. The definition may vary because we weren't at a hot war with China at the time, but that is a fine, fine line. And one misstep could put you over one side or over the other. So that, I know a lot of people on Twitter right now are running out and saying, this is automatically treason. But the fact that we're not at war with China and actually do a lot of trading with them might save Milley's ass from a firing squad. But he should still be convicted no matter what. Yeah, this should be a dishonorable discharge. Because there's no way that this should be. You know, you've undermined your commander-in-chief, who has been given broad and extraordinary powers too, by the way, by Congress abdicating their role to make war to the presidency. Calling a foreign leader, acting in that capacity, this might be that stupid Logan Act that they keep talking about, where General Milley is acting in the capacity saying that he is the one that's actually in control of the military, not the presidency. There are a lot of problems with this. But there's more. But wait, there's more. From NBC, Milley acted to prevent Trump from misusing nuclear weapons. War with China, book says. This is from Dara Gregorian and Jesse Rodriguez. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mark Milley, took steps to prevent then-President Trump from misusing the country's nuclear arsenal during the last month of his presidency, according to a new book by the Washington Post's Bob Woodward and Robert Costa, obtained by NBC News. Their book, Peril, said that in the final days before the 2020 election, Milley also acted to prevent potential conflict with China. The book said Milley received intelligence that Chinese officials believed the U.S. was getting ready to attack them. To defuse tensions, Milley called the head of China's military, General Li Zuo-cheng, and told him the American government is stable and we're not going to attack. So that is, that right there is all the information that was in the Washington Post article, but there is more. The book set to be released on September 21st also recounted a phone conversation Milley had with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi after the January 6th selfie fest, which Pelosi blamed on an unhinged Trump. Pelosi said in January she spoke to Milley about preventing an unstable president from initiating military hostilities or accessing the launch codes and ordering a nuclear strike. I can guarantee you can take that to the bank, that that the nuclear triggers are secure, and we're not going to allow anything crazy, illegal, immoral, or unethical to happen, Milley told her, according to a transcript of the call obtained by the authors. The president alone can order the use of nuclear weapons, but he doesn't make the decision alone. One person can order it, several people have to launch it, he said later in the conversation. After the call, Milley summoned senior officers from the National Military Command Center to go over the procedures for launching nuclear weapons. The book said he told officers that if they got a call, you do the procedure, you do the process, and I'm part of that procedure, he said, making sure that he was in the loop on any planned military actions, the book said. Those scenarios didn't come to fruition. So, yeah, there's that. Now, the first thing that I'm going to say, this is something that Midget B pointed out last night on the Porch Boys, that I do want to bring out to the forefront is, when did we start trusting Bob Gale? Is it Bob Gale? No. Bob Gale's the Back to the Future guy. Bob Woodward. When did we start trusting Bob Woodward? So do make your own assessments off of this. I don't know how true any of this is. It wouldn't seem that Bob Woodward would specifically go out to try to undermine a member of the Joint Chiefs, especially somebody who's been so supportive of the Democrat cause at this point. But given the withdrawal from Afghanistan and the direction that that went, I'm also not entirely surprised to find out that there were things that are going on. And could Milley be thrown under the bus for this? Could they just be out there trying to find something that they can go pin him on so they can lead him out in shame and make him the scapegoat for the entire Afghanistan debacle? I don't know. Because I don't know if any of this happened. I take everything that Bob Woodward says with a grain of salt. I mean, if this is true, this is explosive. This is absolutely explosive. But I also consider the source off of this. Let's read. I want to hear from the New York Post. Alexander Vindman says General Milley must resign if China calls report true. A key witness in the first impeachment of then-President Trump said Tuesday that Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, must resign if he's confirmed to have made secret calls to his Chinese counterpart in order to reassure Beijing that Trump would not order military action against the communist superpower. Once again, a person who's no friend to Trump and would conceivably be a friend of Milley if all this is true. Retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, a former member of the National Security Council, tweeted that if he calls were made, Milley usurped civilian authority, broke chain of command, and violated the sacrosanct principle of civilian control over the military. It's an extremely dangerous precedent. You can't simply walk away from that, added Vindman, who concluded his post by adding a hashtag to the phrase, "Do the right thing the right way." Details of the call between Milley and Li Zuocheng, the chief of the Joint Staff Department of Beijing's Central Military Commission, were reported by Woodward and Costa of the Washington Post in their forthcoming book, Peril. In the first call, which took place October 30th of last year, Milley reportedly told Li that, "I want to assure you that the American government is stable and everything is going to be okay." Yeah, we read all this up over here on the Washington Post article. Like I say, as far as Woodward goes, he is a reporter for the Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness. It is a rag. It's nothing but propaganda at this point. It probably should be put out of production at this point. But if it's true, this is explosive. I mean, Bob Woodward himself is a criminal. So do consider the source on some of this stuff, but I would keep my eye on the goings-on in Washington. All right, let's keep going. All right, from Fox Business. Americans' inflation fears hit another high in August as prices continue to climb. From Megan Henney. Americans' inflation fears hit another record in August as the price of consumer goods continued to surge, according to a Federal Reserve Bank of New York survey published on Monday. The median expectation is that the inflation rate will be up 5.2% 1 year from now, the 10th monthly consecutive increase and another new high for the gauge, and up 4% 3 years from now, the highest level since August of 2013, according to the New York Federal Reserve's survey of consumer expectations. Inflation uncertainty, or the uncertainty expressed regarding future inflation outcomes, increased at both the short and medium-term horizons to the new series highs, the survey said. Both measures remain well above the levels observed before the COVID-19 pandemic. Consumers also say they expect the price of things like food, gasoline, medical care, and rent to increase over the next year, while the expectations for college tuition inch down slightly to 7%. Yeah, that's that asses and seats thing I told you about. You take away the asses and seats, and they start looking back and saying, shit, what do we do? What do we do? We got to do something to get more people coming to our crappy college. At the same time, Americans expect the prices of homes to fall slightly, with one-year expectations decreased slightly to 5.9% in August, marking the third straight monthly decline. Despite the decline, it's still substantially higher than the previous one-year average of 3.7%. The survey comes in light of a new Labor Department report released last week, which showed that inflation at the wholesale level surged at the highest known level since August 2010. The Consumer Price Index, which measures inflationary pressures before they reach consumers, climbed 0.7% last month to 8.3%. Excluding volatile food and energy prices, the so-called core inflation jumped 5.4% in July. Compared to the previous year, still month over month, the Consumer Price Index climbed 0.3% in July, well below June's increase of 0.9%, a sign inflation could be plateauing. Inflation has accelerated as the economy recovers from last year's brief but extremely severe recession. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell has largely attributed the spike in consumer prices to pandemic-induced disruptions in the supply chain, a shortage of workers that's pushed wages higher, and a wave of pent-up consumers flush with stimulus cash. Still, he's maintained the rise in inflation is likely transitory. It's transitory, don't worry. No, it doesn't matter that you're It doesn't matter that your groceries are going up month over month over month and your fuel is out of the ceiling. It's transitory. And warned about the dangers of the Federal Reserve acting superfluously to lower the benchmark of federal funds rate. The New York Fed survey is based on the respondents from about 1,300 households, which is part of the problem with polling in and of itself. And it goes in both directions. When you do polling, it's 1,000, 1,200, 1,300 households. And they can go and pull that out to whatever result that they want. Fox News knows this. They can go out here and they can sample the polls in whichever way they want to get whatever outcome they can use to make whatever headline they want. Reuters does this too. The Hill does this too. Ipsos does this too. They all do this here. It's nothing new. But what we do know is we look out here and we see the cost of groceries going up substantially, 30, sometimes 40% on some items that I've bought over the past few months. And some of that is the printing of money, consumers flush with stimulus cash, as they said, and the fuel cost that's going back up through the roof. Because transporting that food to the grocery store is also about 100% more expensive than it was at this time last year. 200%, depending on what part of the country you're in. Now, I will say that it's not a massive climb because the cost of transport didn't go down when gas hit 91 cents a gallon. But still, the cost of these small carriers, and even the big carriers, have increased. So they have to pass that on to their end customers, who have to pass that on to you. There is inflation going on, and it's getting excessive. All right, from the Blaze. Taliban hunts down and kills Afghan sniper who helped British Army and was abandoned after disastrous America-led pullout. Entirely predictable this would happen. Honk, honk. Everybody who wanted to get out got out. Honk, honk. Everybody who's still there wanted to stay. From Chris Field. President Biden's much maligned pullout of U.S. personnel from Afghanistan that stranded Americans and American allies in the region also forced international allies to make similar moves. And now the world is learning just how dangerous the retreat was for many of the stranded Afghans who helped the West in the fight against the Taliban and terrorism in the South Asian country. A Tuesday report from the Times of London told the tragic story of an Afghan sniper who was trained by and served with British Special Forces and was then left behind when the Biden-instigated pullout chaos ensued. The Taliban executed the Afghan sniper, identified only as N, in order to protect his relatives. His name is N, and he's British. Do you think he's related to the lady from the James Bond movies? M? The Times said he was shot multiple times in the front of his family in Kabul. Former British Army Colonel Ash Alexander Cooper told the paper. Hold on. Wait a second. They're only identifying him as N so they can protect his family from the Taliban who shot him in front of his family. Now, I totally agree with keeping his name out of this because, you know, there are other interests around the world and you don't dox people. But that just seems contradictory in and of itself. Alexander Cooper, who served with N on the same operations and served 8 tours in Afghanistan, said the 28-year-old man was the father of 5 and had been hiding in the capital city, but was found and killed on Monday. The murdered Afghan was part of British-trained elite unit who had fought the front line. The colonel told the Times, a former newspaper, that authorities should have seen this coming. It was entirely predictable that this would happen for all those left behind who were given no guidance, he said. He's been hiding because of the threat he faced, but they found him, and he was shot multiple times, executed in front of his family. Alexander Cooper posted a censored photo of N to Twitter on Monday, with a warning that the world could expect more of this kind of horror from the Taliban. For those that are still unsure, this is not a game, he wrote. N was executed by the Taliban in cold blood just a few hours ago. His crime? Years of loyal and professional service, mentored by British unit. There is no amnesty, abandoned by us. The murder will not be the last. And yeah, that's his face blocked out for this. Not entirely sure what the point is, except to show that the dude is swole. But, I mean, we're looking at this, and, you know, we were promised by the media that everybody who wanted to get out of Afghanistan got out, and that nobody would be in harm's way after they were left behind because everybody wanted to stay there. They all thought this was a great thing to stay in Afghanistan after the purported pullout. But once again, this is my biggest fear going on with this, is that this is going to lead us back into another war. We do not need to be going back over there for any reason whatsoever. But we've got the asshole war hawks like Lindsey fucking Graham, like Biden himself, like Ted Cruz to an extent. Although I think he would just do whatever the people tell him to, and war has become a dirty word to Republicans, so he would pretend that he's not a miserable fucking war hawk. Like Shapiro, that goddamn cocksucker.
Oh, well, gang, we should be over in Afghanistan and forever because, you know, the Muslims over there, they want to wipe Israel off the face of the world. So we need to be over there and we need to make sure everything stays over there. Okay, gang?
All these miserable fucking war hawks in Washington are just chomping at the bit and drooling. Liz Cheney, there's another one. Drooling over the fact that we might get over the fucking W that cocksucker wants to go back over into this goddamn worthless pit. Because they want that poppy. They want to take us back down the cheap heroin, the cheap opiates to prison pipeline. And they got to control those fields, otherwise China they'll make the fentanyl, they'll send it over here, and they will, you Americans, you want the fentanyl? Oh, you pay for fentanyl. And then your average drug user won't be able to afford it, and therefore won't be able to get on the prison pipeline, except for smoking a fucking joint. That's what these war hawks want us to be, is back over here. So expect more stories like this. And Glenn Beck is no fucking better, by the way, the owner of The Blaze. He's a miserable fucking neocon warhawk too. Alright, let's keep going. Kathy Hochul, here's another one. Hochul tells Facebook to clean up the act on abortion misinformation after Texas law. From Justine Coleman. New York Governor Kathy Hochul called on Facebook to to clean up the act on abortion misinformation on Monday as part of the state's response to Texas's fetal heartbeat abortion ban. The new governor said at a briefing that New York is sending a letter to Facebook on Monday requesting the social media giant's assistance in a war against misinformation about abortion, as well as COVID-19 vaccines. I'm asking... Wait, do we have video? We have video. Let's watch the video. Oh, it's 47 minutes. Fuck that. We're not going to watch the video. Never mind. Never mind. False alarm. We'll see what they do with it, Hochul said, referring to the letter. I'll be watching and let them know we have expectations. Facebook did not immediately respond to a request for comment. New York has had previous experience with misinformation around the abortion legislation. In the weeks following the passage of New York's Reproductive Health Act in 2019, Hochul noted that people were reading lies on social media, with 4 of the top 10 stories on Facebook misrepresenting the state bill, which expanded abortion rights and eliminated several abortion restrictions. I want to make sure that as we enter this new chapter after what the Supreme Court upheld on September 1st, that we ensure that we don't allow these lies to continue. And there's accountability and responsibility at the top of these companies to help tell the truth across the nation, Hochul said. The Supreme Court declined to block the Texas law as it went into effect earlier this month, sparking concern among activists about the future of reproductive rights in the country. Undeniably, this Texas decision is abhorrent, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand said at a press conference. I can't imagine a worse decision for women. But man, we all know what happened in the Lone Star State. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I know that it pisses a lot of people on the left off because they can't just run off to the Supreme Court and say, oh, the government's banning abortion, because they technically haven't. They've just allowed people to sue. I was argued against on Monday by my guest co-host Trent Ortner that it requires an aggrieved party rather than anybody to sue. I have looked into that, and it does require an aggrieved party to do so, but the aggrieved party can sue everybody who is along the chain as well. It's not a bounty either, by the way. They're going to keep trying to tell you it's a bounty. It's not a bounty because the third party, which in this case would be the state, would be the one that pays the bounty, not the defendant. But I love the fact that Hochul thinks that she can tell Facebook what it is that they can do. But my private company! My private company! What are you going to do? Block the servers in New York? Block people from accessing the app in New York? That's probably the best thing for New York. So maybe you should do that. Imagine using Facebook. He said while streaming to Facebook. Do we have a problem over here? Do we need to... Does somebody need a timeout? Regulars, make a vote. 0 for timeout, 1 for let him keep running his mouth. I'll let the chat decide. Alright, let's keep going. Protests held at Brett Kavanaugh's home over Texas abortion bill decision. From Ewan Palmer. Dozens of left-wing protesters demonstrated at Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh's Maryland home in the wake of the passing of a restrictive abortion bill in Texas. Kavanaugh was one of the 5 conservative judges who allowed the banning of all abortions in the state if a fetal heartbeat can be detected. Something which can happen after only 6 weeks after voting to deny an emergency appeal brought by abortion rights advocates to block its enforcement. The shutdown DC protest group previously described in a Facebook event that they would be targeting one of Trump's picks for the Supreme Court over the decision, which has been met with outrage from Democrats and women's rights advocates. Make no mistake, what's happening to reproductive justice and abortion rights is far bigger than one person. But Kavanaugh is playing a key role, and so far he's been protected from any backlash. Shut Down DC wrote, "No more." There was no voter fraud. Honk honk. Biden is the most popular president in history. Honk honk. Nothing bad happened. 80 million votes, even more votes than Barack Obama. Honk honk. Alright. We're done with this. We're done with this. You can be quiet for 10 minutes and think about what you've done. If you want to come out and spread conspiracy theories in my chat, you're done. Because this also transmits to YouTube. Alright. Let's keep going. We'll see you in 10 minutes. Let's see. Kavanaugh was one of 5 conservative justices who allowed the banning of all abortions. Not true. In the state, if a fetal heartbeat can be detected, something which can happen after only 6 weeks, after voting to deny an emergency appeal brought by abortion rights advocates to block its enforcement. The Shutdown DC protest group previously described in a Facebook event that they could be targeting one of Donald Trump's picks for Supreme Court over when we read this already. Around 50 to 60 people gathered outside Kavanaugh's home in Chevy Chase, holding placards demanding that he resign and protesting against the new restrictive abortion law he allowed to pass. Alright, there is Kristen Mink of CPDA Action speaking about her abortion in front of Brett Kavanaugh's house. Bans off our bodies. Because it's archived, we have no video, unfortunately, but yeah, it looks like, yeah, they were out in front of his house, which, that is the thing that's always bothered me about this. The fact that they go in front of people's homes, where their wives and children live. Now, if you go to the office, I have no problem with that. Most of that is public property. Most of that is defended by Capitol Police. Most of that is defended, your protesters can be defended, and the people inside can be defended as well. That's all. And it's the same thing, when you come to a state house. When you go to the governor's mansion, because the governor's mansion is also state-owned property. And the Capitol Police, like the governor's mansion in Madison, the Capitol Police have jurisdiction over that. So the protesters can be protected, and there's somebody there. Just in case somebody gets hurt in the protest, they can get the ambulance out there, they can clear a path for that. Doing all this on public property, I have no problem with. It's the people's house, it's the people's property, and they should be able to protest there. But this is private property. And why bring the wife and kids into this on top of it? What end do you expect to cause from this? It was the same thing when they were trying to bash down the door at Tucker Carlson's house. They could have easily done this outside of Fox News headquarters. That's not public property. That would be to the discretion of Fox News. But you're trying to bust down a massive door while a wife and a kid hide in a pantry, terrified, and Tucker's not even fucking there. Don't bring this to people's homes. What the fuck are you thinking? But regardless, that's where it comes from. The Senate has actually had a fairly reasonable approach to this. Reading from The Hill, senators denounce protest staged outside of home of Justice Kavanaugh. From John Krusell. The top Democratic and Republican members of the powerful Senate panel condemned a protest held Monday night outside the home of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, stating that public officials' residences and families should be off limits. The protest, organized by the liberal group Shutdown DC, came in response to the Supreme Court's 5-4 vote earlier this month to leave intact Texas's new 6-week abortion ban, which many legal experts see as a possible precursor to the further erosion of abortion rights. The protest route led some 50 participants demonstrating outside the Chevy Chase, Maryland home of Kavanaugh, which drew fire Tuesday from top members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Politics ain't beanbag. We all know that you have a tough mental hide to be in this business, says Dick Durbin, who chairs the committee, during a panel hearing, but it's also absolutely unacceptable from my point of view to involve any major public figure's family or their home. A spokesperson for the Supreme Court declined to comment. Chuck Grassley of Iowa, the committee's top Republican member, blasted what he characterized as an effort by left-wing activists to undermine judicial independence. This protest looks like another blatant attempt to intimidate the judiciary and anyone who disagrees with the radical agenda pushed by partisan advocates, Grassley said. Shutdown D.C. did not immediately respond to a request for comment from the Hill. Senator Patrick Leahy also denounced the protesters' methods. I love this too, the way the Hill does this. Dick Durbin denounced. Solemn. It was bad. It's unacceptable. Patrick Leahy denounced. It was so bad. Chuck Grassley, blasted! Evil! He hates these people! The linguistics of this is just, it's butt, to quote my best friend, who we will be going and watching in just a couple minutes here because we are running up on the clock. But I wanted to make sure that we got this one here in before we got to the end of the show. AOC biscuit slapped with ethics complaint for accepting free Met Gala tickets. From Stephen Nelson and Julie Grace Brufke. Now, I've heard several versions of the story. I green check verified the New York Post story, and they seem to be the most accurate about this. But I've seen people who were coming out and saying the ethics committee was for the fact that she wore the dress, or that she even went to the gala, or what it is. But it does look like the ethics complaint is because she accepted the tickets from a donor, which is what I anticipated yesterday is what happened. She accepted the tickets from a donor in order to wear a $500,000 dress. Which we'll see why this is enough. I haven't pre-read this article, but I ran it through the green check verification. A conservative group is asking the Office of Congressional Ethics to launch an investigation of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, D-Twitch, for accepting free tickets to Monday's Met Gala, where she wore a custom gown that said, "Tax the Rich." The self-declared socialist congresswoman drew broad social media scorn for partying at the elite $35,000 per ticket event, while presenting herself as a rabble-rousing foe. We watched the video. What part of her was being a foe? Oh, look at me! I'm at the Met Gala, and I'm telling these rich people I'm going to tax the rich. The self-declared socialist congresswoman drew broad social media scorn for partying at the elite $35,000 per ticket event. Oh, I've read that one already. Thomas Jones, the founder of the American Accountability Foundation, wrote in an ethics complaint that he believes Ocasio-Cortez, who represents parts of the Bronx and Queens, broke House rules by accepting an impermissible gift of free tickets to attend the annual gala, which was attended by fellow New York Democratic Representative Carolyn Maloney. Although House rules allow members to accept free tickets to charity events directly from event organizers, Jones argues that the Met Gala doesn't count because the guest list is curated by a private company, media giant Condé Nast. That's interesting. While the individual's invitations may bear the name of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the museum has ceded control over the invitations to a for-profit company, specifically Condé Nast, and to its chief content officer, Anna Wintour, James wrote. He wrote that the New York Times, a former newspaper, outlines that the Met does not have control over who is invited to the event, but rather the for-profit company is in control of who gets invited. The Times reported that about 400 chosen ones got to attend this year. The gala is thrown ostensibly to raise money for the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Costume Institute. It has become known as a celebration of opulence and exclusivity. Well, I've been talking for an hour and a half, and I'm starting to stumble over the words again. The allergies are not helping, though. Jones, a former aide to Senator Ron Johnson, Additionally claimed that Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, was able to purchase access to Representative Ocasio-Cortez that is unavailable to the average citizens by sponsoring a table at the gala. The Office of Congressional Ethics can refer complaints to the House Ethics Committee for further review. Jones did not mention his complaint at any possible issues around the custom gown worn by Ocasio-Cortez. The Tax the Rich outfit was created by designer Aurora Jones. So, that actually, if that's the case, if they can't accept opulent gifts from private citizens, I do have to wonder what then is going to happen with this dress, too. Because I pointed out that this dress, a lot of people are coming out and talking about the fact that, you know, this is just some designer gown or something, and, you know, $1,000 gown or this or that. This is a one-off dress from a major designer. Technically, one could say that this is a priceless dress because there will never ever be another one. This was a custom thing for one event. But the real value in this dress is going to come when it gets sold for fundraising, charity, and we talked about this yesterday too. Like if they decide to sell the dress for, I bet you they could get $500,000 for that dress. No problem. I bet you some rich progressive is out there that says, I want to own the dress that AOC wore to own the Met Gala. And, you know, hopefully they go back and put that money into the food bank, but I would be more expectant to see that if they sold the dress that it would go into the re-election campaign. Just knowing how Washington politics works. I don't know if that's what would happen, but that would be my expectation, just seeing what I've seen over the last 3 years of observing this and watching this. But regardless, I mean, is that dress, is that an impermissible gift? Is that an opulent gift? Especially if they can get that kind of money back up out of it. As far as the Met Gala goes, I think that's going to be a stretch. The way that the New York Post is presenting it. I think that's going to be a stretch for the Ethics Committee to find this to be unethical. I think it's possible, but I think it's a stretch. And the fact that Ron Johnson is associated with it too, just... That dude. I hope to God he holds true to his promise that he wasn't going to seek a third term. Because he needs to be out of Wisconsin politics, like fucking stat. Because he's a Q asshole. He really is. Alright. But that's what we see off of that. And it is 9:05 in the morning, which means that I've got to get myself up and go to work. Which means that we need to lead ourselves out of here. Which in turn, for the last time, means that we've got to talk about something that I am thankful for. The last thing that we do on a Wednesday always is go over something that I'm thankful for, because we need to end this out on a positivity. And really, honestly, politics kind of pisses me off a lot. News and politics, more and more as I do this longer and longer, pisses me off more and more. So we gotta have a little palate cleanser. So, and I've talked about my mom recently, because you guys know that she had a knee injury, and that the community came together and took care of her during the knee injury. And I spent, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, up with her. I have an update for that. It turns out that, yes, it was a torn ACL, but it looks like the surgery is not going to be possible because it's an old tear of the ACL. It's not something that's current or new. So she's going to be going to physical therapy. Everything's going to be fine. There's probably going to be some additional medicine in the regimen to make sure that she's up and able to walk around. But it looks like with a little bit of therapy, she's going to be up and holding trays and slinging food for years yet to come. I do wish she would stop. She's 61 years old. But she's going to be in that small town diner slinging food before we know it again. So, and I'm thankful for that. Because, yes, I do wish she would stop. But I understand the kind of hard workers that my parents are. You know, they raised me to be the same way. I understand, and I'm not going to begrudge them of the ability to do so, but, I'm thankful for the fact that, she's not going to be walking around with a cane forever, or a walker, or in a wheelchair, or anything like that. She'll be up, she'll be moving, she'll get the physical therapy that she needs, and everything is going to be good again. And I'm thankful for that. I'm happy for that. I'm happy to see it. You hate to see your family put down. It was the same thing when my dad had his heart attack. What was it? 10 years ago. I was afraid that he wasn't going to be able to go back to work anymore, that he was going to be on some major regimen, but, it was just a stint. Stints are so common now, it's like going in and doing an oil change, which maybe says something about the obesity in our country, but because they're so common, yeah, they're in, they're out, and a lot of times you're on your feet within a couple days again, so I'm thankful for that as well. I'm really thankful for my parents, and, everything that they've done, they still have the health to go up and get up and go to work every day. So, mazel tov to that. All right. And that's it. We're done. We're out of here. So, let's change up the track and let's go. All right, so thanks everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat. Yes, even the detractors. Yes, on Friday, I'm still going to say thank you to, what was it, Dave that I timed out? I'm still going to say thank you to him because he came in, he watched the program, he watched the advertisement to watch the program, so I made money off of him. Thanks, Dave. But other than that, we'll be back here tomorrow for more contemporaries, bright and early, 7 a.m., to go back and talk about the news of the news of the day. It's probably going to be a doozy, and there's probably going to be a lot more reporting on the California recall as we go out through the day. I anticipate that that's going to be the top story tomorrow, as more news about the recall and some of the things that have come up in the aftermath for that. I don't know. We'll see what it is that the mainstream assholes present to me, but we'll see what happens then. Until then, we'll see you guys tomorrow. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.